All right, I've got with me Jonathan Forsberg, currently the VP of Ticket Sales and Service with the Bridgeport Sound Tigers of the AHL. How's it going, John?
I'm good, Andrew. How are things with you?
Can never complain, man. It's good to be alive, and the sun's out today, so it's never bad. So, kind of give us a little background on your career path, where you've went, some of the stops that you've made along the way.
Sure. So I got my start. My first sports experience was an internship in college. I'm a graduate of Springfield College up in Massachusetts, where I was kind of born and raised. And my first internship was with the Boston Celtics, doing some marketing and sales work with them, which was obviously a great kind of first step for me to take in terms of becoming a professional and learning the ins and outs of working with, such a strong organization like theirs. From there, I also did an internship, with the American Hockey League, the Sharks organization in Worcester, before finishing up my coursework. And then fortunately, when I graduated in 2009, I was able to apply for an account executive, full menu seller, back with that team. And I like to think that because of the work and the connections I had through my internship, that I was able to secure that position where I worked with them for about 4.5 seasons. And that's where I, initially really cut my teeth. I think like most, people in the industry, I learned the hard way, I think in a lot of different ways. I'll be the first to tell you that I was very naive getting into it. I thought when I took the job, it was, what could be harder than selling hockey in the Northeast? Like we're all hockey fans, and
Yeah, it's easy.
I learned the hard way. I missed my goal by a good amount the first year. So, that's, I think, again, I think a lot of people can relate, but, I had the opportunity to wear many hats there, much like, most people do at this level, which I think exposed me to, a bunch of different resources and different opportunities throughout, my career there. While, like I said, probably 4 years after that, I had the opportunity to go about an hour down the road to Springfield, Massachusetts, where the American Hockey League headquarters is, and work in essentially a department that is built and modeled after the NBA's Teambo program, which prides itself on sharing best practices, conducting site visits with different teams, building relationships, and really being a resource to help, our member clubs drive their ticket sales revenues, their corporate sales revenues, and obviously working there, had the opportunity to work with from, Dave Andrews, who, was the president and CEO at the time, who just recently stepped down, but was a tremendous resource to myself, throughout my career. And you want to talk about learning a lot in that role in 5 years. Like there was just almost like information overload between everything we got from our 31 member clubs and from some of the folks that worked, in that office. And so that was a tremendous opportunity for me as well. Following that, one void in working with some of my previous bosses and mentors that I still, work closely with, I realized I had a void kind of on my resume and trying to align it with some of my future goals, was that I didn't really have a management experience when it came to overseeing a ticket sales staff, which is kind of what brought me down to the Checkers organization, and their affiliate in Carolina, where I spent 1.5 years, overseeing a staff of about 9 or 10. And again, just making sure the day-to-day operations ran smoothly. I took a lot of the best practices that I had learned at the AHL and tried to implement them down there. And we were successful in doing so. I think I'll add that we did win the Calder Cup that year. And this was going on simultaneously with the Hurricanes down the road doing their post-game antics of storm surge and stuff. So I think that year for hockey in North Carolina really pulled a 180. So we fed off that energy a little bit. But my goal again was to build my resume a little bit there. Again, being able to oversee a staff, and then this opportunity that I'm in now as the VP of Ticket Sales here in Bridgeport. Honestly, probably came a little bit sooner than expected, but I had some conversations here, and again, it was just a right opportunity. I liked the vision. I like the thought process for what we want to accomplish as a team and as an organization. And so I, fortunately moved back up to the Northeast after a quick year and a half getaway to North Carolina, I guess is the best way to put it. So, we're obviously dealing with, the kind of the tough times now, just like everybody else, but, we're making the best of it and trying to make it work.
Like, I see most of your career has been in hockey. Is that on purpose, or is that just how things worked out?
So ironically, I probably played some form of organized sport growing up other than hockey.
Anything but hockey.
It just kind of worked out that way. Again, I think probably my two major sports were football and basketball. Was bitten by the injury bug quite a bit. So I realized my pro playing days weren't going to be a reality. And so I said, well, let's work on the business side instead. And so I will say that, I've taken a liking to hockey. Like, I think it's a fantastic sport to watch live. I think the players are a completely different breed. Like, anytime you ask them to do something, they're more than willing to do it. And especially at this level, like we've got some of the best hockey players in the world. Like 90% of our guys are going to the NHL, but at the same point, we have the creativity on the business side to have kind of that the flexibility and creativity to kind of do whatever we want. So it's kind of a win-win in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you this: hockey guys are probably some of the toughest athletes that I've ever seen. I mean, I've seen dudes taking pucks to the face and still playing. I would have been crying. I mean, these guys, it's crazy. I would want a full shield on, everything. But these guys, they stand in front of the darn net to try to reflect, the puck. And it's like, man, no way. But I love the game too. I love being at the arena for it more than, TV. It's not as big for me personally, but being there, I'd love to go see any game. And AHL is really high quality.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. Hockey, and I think hockey, the difference between watching it on TV and in real life is probably, one of the biggest differences when it comes to the major sports. I think, at least in my opinion, it's just so fast paced, and I think it gives you an appreciation of, to your point, what these guys are really up against, blocking a shot at, 90 miles an hour and then bouncing back up to keep skating. I can't say I would do the same.
It's crazy with the AHL, with kind of the position you were in. I mean, I would think you probably would have learned more than you probably gave out, in a position like that, getting all that knowledge from all the teams, sharing. And what was that like?
That was probably one of, my best experiences so far in my, short career here. Being able to travel, across the country, north of the border, to conduct different site visits and really walk in and instantly take, good ideas. Maybe there's some things you see where you're like, you know what, I probably wouldn't implement this if I oversaw a sales staff. But, to your point, we went and we did our best to provide value and, again, share best practices. And, the one thing about our league is every market we've got quite a kind of variance with the size of the market and the scope of the market. Some major league markets such as Chicago, Toronto's, and then some smaller market teams. But the one thing that was constant is like we typically walked out, and whether it be traveling back, whether it be a car ride or a plane ride, it was like again we took just as many notes I think as they did, and that helped build our kind of library of resources. And then, in turn, we shared that with the rest of the league. Like at the end of the day, we prided ourselves on knowing, the teams on the ice compete, but off the ice, we all had to work together. And, if the team in Toronto was selling tickets and they shared an idea with Chicago, like that's a positive thing, right? Like we want all of our markets to be successful. And so that's where we based a lot of our thought process on. But there a lot of what I instituted down in Charlotte and a lot of what I instituted or am doing here today in Bridgeport, most of those ideas came from my time at the HL or from other clubs, which like I said, I think without that experience, I wouldn't be able to be doing what I'm doing today.
Well, and I think probably in that position, the positions you were at in the HL have got to, they just have to have had a positive impact on your career because you're networking with and working with all these teams. And like for Bridgeport, the team president, did you know him prior, from working with him at the HL, or is it somebody new?
Yeah, so it's somebody new. The gentleman that runs our team now, his name's Brent Rossi. He just came over this past October from Pagula Sports and the Sabres properties in Buffalo. To speak to your point, like it was 100% accurate. The opportunity to be a resource for VPs and team presidents when it came to, hey, I'm looking for a staff member. Maybe it was a director of ticket sales. Maybe it was a best practice to sell playoff tickets, which for our, the teams in our league is traditionally difficult because we've got a short turnaround time. So if you can build that trust and if you can show that you're helping them drive results, that goes a long way, for a lot of those individuals. And then, I would tell you that a large part of probably me getting the role in Charlotte, a few years ago was probably because of my relationship prior to getting down there with their COO, Tara Black, who's the only female in the American Hockey League that runs a team and is probably, if not one of the most respected people, at that level. It was the connection that I had with her and the relationship that I had with her where we, again, had a conversation as to what she was looking for, to fill a role, on her staff. And it made, sense for both of us to kind of team up. And that was, again, for her knowing me prior to, but also me knowing that I'm going to be able to surround myself with, a leadership group such as herself and my boss at the time, Sean Lynch, who has been, the VP down there for many years, was a huge part of me making that move.
Yeah, I've heard great stuff about the leadership in Charlotte. So the one thing I've learned is, and from having people on the podcast is, people. And, I took my first job since I was 19, 7-8 months ago with the Nationals minor league team here. And I've come to realize that is number one. I kind of took the position because I didn't have a job before. I always owned teams and I wanted to get into being in the front office of where I'm not going to make the money or lose the money, but I can have an impact because, but I realized, what, you have to have the right chemistry, and I didn't have it here. But it's important and having good leaders like that is it's going to help, just overall. So you, with the Checkers, so you were senior director of sales and analytics. What would you say you did on the analytics side?
Yeah, so I think that stemmed, again, from some of my experiences in time coming down from the league headquarters. We have kind of a system across our league where it tracks everyone's ticket sales and everything that kind of goes along with it, as well as their corporate sales. But what that allows us to do is identify trends and, more importantly, outliers when it comes to who's might be doing something really, really well, or on the flip side, why is there's, maybe a slump in some position. And so what I tried to do was, again, identify those positive outliers and say who's doing it, but then go a step further and ask why, right? And so if you were, working for your baseball team down in Virginia, if I saw something you guys were doing and I was like, wow, they just sold 100 season tickets or something out of this one event, that's going to prompt me to get on the phone with you and say, walk me through that blueprint and tell me, kind of what that looked like and why it was successful and how can I duplicate it in some ways on my end. But I think we did try our best to really use data to help us make business decisions, I think is the best way to put it. Whether it be setting ticket prices or staff structure and size, allocating different number of accounts to people. Like there was a kind of a science behind all of it, like I said, that I worked with my boss at the time on, for things to make sense, as opposed to really kind of guessing and saying, hey, we just want to increase prices, or hey, we want to do this, for whatever reason, because we want to drive more revenue. Well, obviously that's what everyone wants to do, but does it make sense? And can we back it with, hard data that is going to help us get to, to where we want to be ultimately.
So you've been on the team side, the league side. Do you have a preference on what side of the table you're on?
Great question. I think both were really, really good experiences. I will say that as much as I liked the time at the league headquarters, there was part of you that missed being on the team side, and kind of that you felt a little bit more competitive in a lot of ways. And when I was at the league, like you didn't have I didn't have individual sales goals or like a goal to hit. And I think as most salespeople would probably agree, like even though it can be stressful at times, like it's kind of that you kind of want that, like that good pressure.
You need that, the adrenaline.
Adrenaline and that good pressure in a lot of ways. So for me, it's extremely rewarding to get back on the team side, and we all know it's a lot of work, but it's rewarding when you can hopefully, whenever the time is, when we rip the Band-Aid off of all this and we have an opening night, that we can hopefully have a full building, or at least at some point have a full building, and then that's when you are able to walk around and kind of look at everyone and say, hey, look at what we did here, right? Like there's a lot of energy and work that went into it, but it's almost it's really rewarding.
Yeah, I'm a competitor, so for me, I've worked on both. I mean, the league stuff has challenges and a lot of cool stuff, but like there's nothing better than just on the sales side, like I don't want to just be the best here. I want to be the best throughout the whole league. I'm always competing, and I try to make it fun with the staff. You got to be competitive, but not you got to be able to still work together and achieve that. And it's always fun to see the development of staff, especially with what we've worked with, a lot of entry level people as well, seeing them develop and grow. So with your current role with the Sound Tigers, what how do you have it structured? Like, are you guys segmented out? Do you guys sell full menu?
Yeah, it's another great question, and it's one of the changes that we just recently made as I came on board, probably at the beginning of March here with the team. Prior to me joining, it was full menu, kind of a wild. We phrase it as like a wild west. Everyone could kind of sell anything, and I think that what we found was that certain staff members, probably by no fault of their own, they were gravitating towards kind of the easier sells, or things that meant more money in their pocket, which is great from like an individual perspective, and again, money's money, so we didn't want to fight it, but at the same point, I think we were ignoring certain areas of our business that are vital for our success. And then here at the AHL, we're a group sales driven league, and we weren't probably putting enough focus on that area of things. And so we've now gone to having a group sales department of we've got seven people there now, including a director, and then we've got 4 people on our full season and package sales side of things, to make a staff of about 11, and then we've got a ticket ops person. But that we've done that, and then we've also aligned now their goals strategically for it to make sense for them, and so that they're not losing anything, or they're not being stripped of their opportunities to sell. We're just trying to get them to sell in the right direction and in a way where they can be laser focused and become essentially the product expert in a lot of what they want to do. So apart from having a group sales staff, we've now, I've got folks that are strictly schools, strictly dance performance and martial arts, strictly I've got one person on youth hockey and sports, and she crushes it. Like, she's got a ton of resources and relationships already. And so again, I think that was our approach, is as opposed to having folks do a lot of things, decent or average, I'd rather have, them do one or 2 really things that, excellent.
Like prior, you said they were kind of selling everything. Were they crossing over into partnerships too, or were they just still all on ticketing?
Yeah, they were crossing in. They had the opportunity to sell some partnerships as well. And then we also have a unique opportunity here in Bridgeport, where we also sell some of the arena events. So if we have concerts, family shows that come through, we're also tapping into those things and giving them the opportunity to sell those as well.
how's kind of the structure of the front office with you guys? You and then team president. Is there somebody, a VP on the partnership side as well, and marketing?
So we have a director on the partnership side right now, and he's got a pretty decent sized staff as well under him in terms of sellers and people that are activating on those deals. And then we also, I think probably shortly before I joined, we brought in a VP of marketing, and he had actually been under the same roof. He was just on the arena and building side, and now he's on our team side, which was I think a step in the right direction for a lot of reasons, and he's been a tremendous resource for us moving so far.
How about you're talking about the new marketing person? I've known, just from over the years, how crucial it can be to be able to work well with marketing so that the message helps produce sales. I mean, if done right, and obviously a lot of marketing people, no knock against them, they're not salespeople, and they maybe don't understand what moves the needle on that. How do you guys do working together? And, I've been at some that they're totally separate and they don't really interact, which is bizarre to me, but how's it going there?
I can tell you it's been phenomenal from the early on here. He, I think, has a clear understanding of what we're trying to accomplish. We speak, multiple times daily about, again, being on the same page. And I'll even go a step further. Our president, Brent Rossi, again, who joined last October, he comes from a marketing background as well. But he is still very much a ticket sales guy at heart, and he understands that drives everything, right? And so while we want to make sure the experience and the marketing outreach is there, if we don't have the fans in the building to witness all of it, we're not accomplishing what we want to. And so we work, hand in hand very closely. Again, you've got I think there's a kind of a give and take in a lot of ways, right? Like I think it's just understanding what we're trying to accomplish, not just as a ticket sales VP or a marketing VP, but from a higher level things. And then, again, we've got to make sacrifices in some areas, while in other areas it's, hey, we can't budge on this. This is going to bring in a major group for us. And so, like I said, it's gone tremendously well. And then the other thing I'll even add in a step further, which is outside of marketing, is, we have a lot of leadership calls in our buildings run by OVG, and a gentleman by the name of Matt Herpick is our GM, and he's on those calls as well. And so you talk about the relationship between marketing and sales being vital. I would also say that I know sometimes the building, against the team is sometimes just
that's always touchy. It's always touchy.
and so again, I think the fact that he is bought into all of our visions, our goals, like he is under essentially the same umbrella in a lot of ways, really just speaks to again, us being all on the same page, and we've all got to contribute to one goal. And that has been, again, I think in my young career, kind of probably the biggest eye opener in terms of, I know for a fact that's not necessarily the case in a lot of markets. And so fortunate to have, again, a great leadership staff surrounding me, and again, the flexibility to have those conversations when we need to.
Yeah, you really hit it on the facilities, because many facilities, it's just like a tug of war almost between the team and the facility. Yeah. And everybody's like, oh, we want to work together. We want to work together. But I don't know if they just don't mean it or what, but it's, just from being in indoor soccer, arena football, we're typically the redheaded stepchild anyway. So if there's a hockey team in the building, obviously it's a lot more dates. And so I remember in St. Louis, we had indoor soccer and we owned the arena football team, and they brought in an ECHL team. I think it was CHL at the time, St. Charles Chill. And man, the arena did everything for the hockey team. Everything. It was like, we wanted a Saturday date. We had to play at like noon. So they could play at 7:00. Oh. And it was about mid-season, I think, when they realized, okay, we need to focus on the soccer team. Our soccer team killed it, 5,000-6,000 fans a game, and hockey was getting like 500 in the CHL. They weren't marketing we reached out to them to say, hey, let's cross promote. Let's try to work together in the community. They kind of put their nose up at us, and, they were one and done. But I think, everyone benefits when, everyone's bought in and working towards a common goal, whether that is another tenant in the building, the arena, the city, all those people. It doesn't take much, but, if you have people pulling this way, pulling that way, you're never going to reach, the top. So it's good to hear that things are really moving along there. And I think that starts with like leadership, probably with your team, and then the leadership of the arena. You have the right people in place, and it goes a long way. So how about this? I saw something on LinkedIn last week I thought was pretty cool, and I wanted to learn more about. What's this Shark Tank stuff you were working on last week?
Well, I use some of my own personal interests, I guess, to bring it into the workplace. I am a huge fan of the Shark Tank show and similar shows. And so I know there's some other teams that have actually done it. I think it was the soccer team in Colorado. This was probably many years ago that I think did something similar. And so I'd have to probably give some credit to them. But we're in kind of an interesting situation also where we've got some, downtime on our hands. And so I was trying to think of creative ways to challenge our staff, keep things fresh, and not have it be the same old, daily outreaches and those types of things. And so I came up with this idea to challenge our group sales team to either take an idea that they've had, for a little while now, or just come up with something completely new, and really develop a business plan, a strategic plan, and then kind of run it by myself and my director of group sales, and allow us to challenge them and get, and answer, or I should say, ask some tough questions. Starting with, setting goals and, what do we want to bring in for ticket sales? What do we want to bring in for revenue? And then almost working backwards and similar to what they do on the show, right. Eliminate that risk, right? If I'm going to invest $100,000, tell me how I'm going to get my money back plus some. We said, show us now, what is your, specific sales strategy? Have we had a conversation with a group leader? Have we, found out what that price point should be? What are the, added value pieces or experiences that we need to implement that we can actually tie to ticket sales? I think there was two major thought process that went into kind of the idea. Number one is we've actually been fortunate enough to bring on some new hires during this time, on our group sales side. So we've got, some green reps that I think are looking for additional training and those types of things. And so it allowed us to craft their mindset and their thinking as to, hey, this should be the way you, try to position things and do things moving forward. And then on the flip side, we have some folks that have been here for a few years that I'm trying to maybe recondition a bit, to look at, again, things from the perspective of, let's run it through, those questions, much like I said, the Sharks on Shark Tank do, to kind of beat it up a little bit. And it's not to discourage anyone from bringing an idea to a table. I think it's just, if we want to do something, let's do it all the way, right? Like we don't want to, do something halfway or have it come across as, it was good, but it wasn't great. We'd rather do, 5 or 10 things really, really well, as opposed to 20 things and be like, hey, it was average and it didn't really add a tremendous amount of value. So, we had fun with it. We're probably going to continue to do it a little bit here and there. And, again, I think it kind of, some of the presentations they made were great. Like you can see that they put some time and effort into it. And I think, again, during this time, it was just a way to break things up a bit and help them out a little bit. But overall, it was a success, I think, on our end.
Was it done through like Zoom or in person or?
Yeah, so it was done through, we're on Microsoft Teams. So okay. Same thing, like we did it was a video call. They had created a PowerPoint presentation with, here's everything, photos, and here's the back, some of the research I've done, here's, the resources I need from us in terms of investing and those sorts of things. So, again, really, really cool, some really creative ideas that, I think, we can certainly look to implement, whether it be this upcoming season or in the future.
So who were the Sharks?
It was myself and my director of group sales, Dan Tamburo, were the major ones. I think my plan is to have them work a little bit more and then probably loop in the whole staff and kind of put the real pressure on. But we wanted to make sure we kind of had the right mindset first before bringing everybody in. But was very pleased, I think, early on with some of the feedback.
Any rock stars out of that first time?
I'll tell you what, some of the new folks that have been here now for maybe a little over a month, really hit some home runs. The way it was structured, without us even really giving a ton of direction, I think showed a lot of effort and intent, which for me is huge. I want to know that you put some thought behind it. But we had some folks, who one of them was partnering with the Special Olympics in a couple of different ways. And he put together a whole backstory. So here's the research I've done. Here's what the partnership looks like. Here's a SWOT analysis and all these different things, which again, I think from a rep that had just, been under our roof for a month, certainly probably, exceeded some of my expectations, which was good to see on our end.
And sometimes having that fresh perspective is good too. He hasn't been with the team for a month or for a year or 5 years. Sometimes it's almost better because they don't have maybe, a different philosophy of you. Like I joined a team where everybody'd been there for a little while. So getting over that, kind of like you said, retraining, getting their minds to think that way sometimes is tough. When you started here, I mean, what kind of has been your best method for prospecting? What's kind of brought the best results for your group here? And then has it been similar in other markets, or I know every market kind of has a little unique twist?
I think it's been, obviously we had some plans to do a bunch of prospecting events at our arena that, we've had to put on the back burner for now. I think there has been some discussions to try some virtual events as we get into the fall here, which we're trying to work on what those details may look like, how, can we maybe tap into some resources in terms of personnel and guest speakers that, maybe we wouldn't originally have had, the access to. But I think, going back to some of the best practices that I've seen in the past is, a couple of things. Number one, really focusing on quality candidates. I think oftentimes we give our reps a goal of hey, you've got to bring at least, 10 people or 10 accounts to an event. And so their knee-jerk reaction is just to kind of invite anyone and everyone. And that can almost have a negative spin to it if the customer feels as if they've been kind of bait and switched in a lot of ways. Hey, you invited me to the arena, now you're cornering me and you're putting me in a
sign this contract right now.
you put me in the locker room and turned up the heat, and now you're talking about season ticket packages. But I think doing those types of things where there's other ancillary events going on around it, such as access to the arena in a lot of different ways, a buy now incentive. The team in Ontario, who's associated with the Kings organization out there, they've done a tremendous job, which I'd love to get to this point as well, where they partnered with Jimmy John's sandwich shop, and they went as far as taking custom orders for each individual coming to the event that day. So, we would provide you with a lunch if you came down to the arena, and you would order, it wasn't just you got what we brought in. It was, Andrew, I want to know exactly how you want your sandwich. So if you want it with mayo, I'll get you with mayo. You want no lettuce? I'll get no lettuce. And so I think while that seems kind of while it seemed maybe over the top for some teams and some folks at our level, the key there is once I do that, now you feel the onus in coming, right? You're oh no, John bought me a sandwich. I've kind of got to show up. And so that's what we learned, was that there's this, it helps kind of when it comes to the obligation process. But so I think
I like that though. I like that. I mean, it's you RSVP, you get people to RSVP and you still don't have 20% show up or whatever. I like that.
It's being very clear and honest with them. I think we have to respect our customers' time. Like at the end of the day, if they're not really, you know, a solid prospect, you know, again, if anything, they might have a negative experience. And then on the flip side, if you are on our staff and you're focusing your time and energy on prospect A, that's just time taken away from you focusing on prospect B. And so, like, let's make sure we're being true to ourselves and setting ourselves up for success. But there's, you know, a lot of creative things we'd like to do. I've always been, one thing I'd love to do too is almost kind of create like a mock draft type of experience where, you know, almost like they get, you know, a jersey and they hold it up with, you know, the team president and they sign a fake contract and those types of things. If they sign up, again, I think, you know, small added value pieces like that, where it's not really costing us any money. Right. It's just an experience that when you think about it, you know, these are your season ticket holders. These are the folks that come 38, you know, times a year. They're your most loyal fans, and they want to feel as though they own a piece of the team and, you know, and that they're, you know, valued and appreciated.
Once you have that, I mean, you pretty much have them for life, as long as you maintain it properly. But I mean, yeah, people love that. Everybody wants to feel like they are on the inside or they're part of the family. And I'm sure there's some really diehards up there too. Team's been Absolutely. There for a little while. So you said you just hired some people not too long ago. Like, what are kind of the top qualities that you look for when you're looking to fill out a staff?
Great question. I think for me, there's a few things that go into it. Probably the number one thing, and again, a lot of it isn't, you know, I don't know if there's anything earth shattering, but it's got to be, you know, your work ethic, kind of your coachability, I think is massive. You know, going back to what we talked about, the way I look at it is I would almost rather have a green rep or like a really inexperienced person that is willing to come in and give me everything they have, that is open to learning, and having us show them and set them up for success, as opposed to maybe somebody that's got 2, 3, 4 years experience, but maybe they're bringing some, you know, bad behaviors or some things that, you know, they say I'm turned off to, you know, doing, you know, trying something differently. That's kind of always the way I've looked at it is, you know, people that are willing to make this more of a career as opposed to just a job. You know, like, what is their end goal and what is their end result, you know? And I think a step further is I'm perfectly fine with that being the case. Like, I don't want really any of my reps to be here for 10, you know what I mean? Like for 10 years, 15 years, like, you know, I
build
want
them up and hope they continue.
Yeah. Like I want to help them grow. And there's kind of that old saying of, you know, what if I train my reps up and they leave? Well, what happens if you don't and they stay, you know, and those types of things. And so, you know, for me, again, I think those are probably a few of the major things, like, you know, really just being willing to come in and put in the effort. I think trust is a huge piece of it. Like, I've got to know that if, you know, when nobody's looking, like, are you making, you know, a decision that our team president would make, you know, and, you know, for the best interest of for the company, you know, and those types of things, which I think fortunately, you know, that's the one thing we've done over these past few months is been able to focus in on our staff and make sure that we have the right people on board, you know, as we move forward, you know, this upcoming season, whenever that is, and into the 21-22 campaign, because that's probably one of the biggest areas for me is the people thing. I think, you know, going back to my experience at the league headquarters, you know, some of the best markets out there were not necessarily because of where they were geographically and again, just opening their doors and taking orders. It was the people that they had in place, you know, whether it be the leadership level or whether it be below them. And so I think the biggest issue right now, and again, I learned this, you know, at teams, is there's probably not enough time being spent on hiring good people. To be honest, that's my thought and my opinion. I think too many times we kind of take the easy way of like, hey, here's this, you know, who's that over there?
Let's give them a try.
Let's drop them in, and let's drop them in with a phone and get them up and going, and they should be successful. Well, I think, you know, we've got to spend some more time and finding the right people, because, if you lose somebody, like there's a cost to replacing them too, in terms of, time, energy, and the sales that's associated with it. But like I said, for me, I'm just a big, come in and be ready to go, be willing to try new things. And, obviously we're going to fail along the way, but learn from your failures and be willing to grow.
So do you, I ask this question to like HR people, just because I know what my mindset is. Do you want a cover letter when somebody sends, applies or a resume? Is it important to you? Or you just want the resume? How do you look at it?
That's a good question. I think for me, I would probably prefer a cover letter. Yes. I think that oftentimes, a resume and a cover letter is kind of your key into this, like either an in-person or virtual conversation. So I think that, apart from your, in a resume, you've got a limited, because of the structure, you've got a limited way of actually expressing yourself and expressing your intent. So I think that in a cover letter, you can, really explain to me like how your skill set or how whatever it is that you're going to bring to the table now applies to exactly what we're looking for. Yeah. And I think some of the best candidates are able to do that. So if you post a job, Andrew, like if I'm reading the actual job, how do I take that description? So what he's looking for, a season ticket sales guy, what, exactly. I'm his guy and here's why, boom, boom, boom. So I think again, going back to the effort intent, like if you want to, a lot of times it's standing out from other people, take the limited amount of time it takes to write a cover letter and show that you really want it.
It's minimal. And I think it's just laziness if you don't put it on there. And for me, and I'm sure in your position, typically when you put a job out there, you're going to get a ton of resumes. And so for me, that's my first disqualifier. Yep. Typically. And I just still go through. And then if I don't have anybody good with a cover letter, then I might go back to the other group. But when I started with the baseball team, I went through our teamwork applications for the people that were working there. And I noticed none of them put a cover letter in. I said, you guys wouldn't have made it here. So be thankful. But I was talking to them about it and they're like, well, our professors tell us not to. And so I don't know. I always like it. It's just a quick way to kind of, like you said, you get a little bit better look inside there. So when you have your ticketing staff, are you kind of like a smile and dial like guy? Do you guys use any technology? I know some teams are like, hey, 100 calls or 60 calls a day. Some are getting more into social selling and some other things. How are you guys kind of working?
Yeah, so this year, fortunately, the Islanders have been tremendous kind of along the whole way in terms of allowing us to use different resources and investing in us to take advantage of certain technology. So I'm still high, very high on phone calls. So yeah, it's still very much part of the process. It's an easy way to complete, many tasks that I think some reps are, again, their comfort level comes from sending an email. Well, if it's something we can just, again, quickly pick up the phone and accomplish, close the sale, like what's your credit card number? Like, let's just do it. With that being said, I will say that, again, I've been, it's been like 10 years now since I was, an account executive. And so the sales process and our customers purchasing process has changed dramatically. And so, for example, one thing that we're going to invest in this year is a texting platform. We're going to be on ZipWhip. Which, will allow us to kind of hit them from a different angle, I think, especially the younger generation, right? Like those are the folks that are screening phone calls that are coming in that, will much rather respond to a text message from one of our agents to kind of at least start that conversation and then hope that it allows me to set up some time with you on the phone. But we've done that. We're going to, social selling once we get back into the office is going to be a huge piece for me to kind of train our staff on and being able to utilize, LinkedIn and those types of things to, connect and build your network. I think I've already been on them. Like, are we connected to all our season ticket holders? Are we connected to our group leaders? If you post something and you're not connected to people, like, it doesn't
matter.
It doesn't go anywhere. So you want your network to see that, and that's going to help you kind of organically build things. Obviously, those types of platforms aren't, it really shouldn't be used as a, just, hey, here's tickets, call me to buy. Like that's not the messaging, but being able to build out experiences and using that as a platform to show businesses, here's a way that Andrew and his company utilized our, suites at a game to whatever, drive traffic to his company or to thank his customers and clients. If you want more information on how you can do the same, those sorts of things, like that's a little bit more organic than a forced sales message.
Those are good. What I found some really good success with just this year was short videos. So whether it be like a little ballpark tour or, somebody who bought a suite, do a quick little, it's almost like a little testimonial from them, but you get these people, it just gets a little bit more engagement that I've seen. And the team, when I got here, we weren't active really on any social media. So that was a big focus. And I want to say we probably sold over 30,000 this year just from LinkedIn. Yep. Connections and people start to reach out to you, which is nice. But now, any other technology that you guys use, like CRMs or any other platforms?
Yeah, so we've gotten the ability. We're going to invest a little bit in some sales lead generation. So that'll help us. I think that I like that because it'll make it a little bit easier. But I'm also very much a driver of, we probably have a ton of data at our disposal that we just haven't really mined and done a good job with so far. So again, coming from a kind of a zero-based budgeting philosophy, like I'm not one that says, in order for us to sell, I needed to go out and buy leads. Right. But again, I won't
hey, if they're willing to get them.
And then apart from that, we are joining Salesforce this coming season as well. So it's going to be our true CRM. We're on Arctics and Ticketmaster here in Bridgeport, which, Arctics for us is then, we've utilized as kind of a CRM, which, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, Arts, I'm sure you are, but Salesforce, I think, is going to be a huge step for us in the right direction to be able to build out those customer profiles. And again, really dive into not just where does Andrew live and what's his phone number, but more importantly, kind of take the big brother approach and really dive into, where do you work and what clubs and groups are you part of, and do you have children, and, those types of things to help us grow our sales.
Last question. I always say last question, and then there's like three more, but in your structure with your team, do they sell tickets as well, or does the ticket portion of that partnership go to one of your team members?
So we have a corporate team right now that does sell tickets, mostly season tickets, and as part of their deals, and that stays on our corporate sales side thing right now. That was a change in a lot of ways that we've made right now. So we've got about 1,100 season ticket holders in terms of a full capacity moving forward. A large contingency of that is on the corporate side, which is one area right now that is a major focus for us, is to get more on that consumer side of things, and your families and maybe some of your local small businesses that aren't spending 50 grand on dasher boards. And so we've actually taken a pretty drastic model of really stripping down our seating chart and making it there's two different price levels based on what level of benefits you want. Like, do you want just kind of the seats and the basic benefits, or do you want that seat with a premier level of benefits that include an Islanders game, free parking, which is, a tremendous value, and those types of things. Because right now we are essentially in like an onboarding process, and we just want to get people in and then kind of work to get creative with some different things. But our vision is to try to prevent as much red tape as possible right now for our fans to become a full season ticket member. And then again, like once we get that base kind of to a comfortable point, where we want to be, then we'll start to play a little bit more. But we've got to get that kind of consumer side of things up to where we feel comfortable.
Nice. Well, let me tell you, I've really enjoyed chatting with you. You shared some great stuff that I like doing these podcasts because it's a way that I can continue to learn and hear what's working for other people. So I appreciate you joining me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, and would love to keep in touch with you here.
Definitely.